Here's a statement most men don't like hearing, but need to hear. When you stop contacting a woman, you don't disappear from her mind. You actually become louder in it. A lot of men believe that if they stop texting, calling, or chasing, a woman will simply move on, forget them, and replace them overnight. That belief keeps men stuck in fear, over-explaining themselves, and staying available even when they feel disrespected or unsure. But that's not how attraction or human psychology really works. When contact suddenly stops, something shifts. The dynamic changes. The routine breaks. And for many women, that interruption creates curiosity, emotional tension, and a strong internal reaction. Not because you're playing games, but because silence removes certainty. And certainty is what makes people feel comfortable enough to stop investing. This topic matters because many men misunderstand what no contact actually does. They either use it emotionally, hoping to punish her, or they avoid it altogether because they're afraid of losing her completely. Both approaches come from the same place: insecurity and lack of clarity. What most men don't realize is that women respond to absence in very specific ways: emotionally first, logically later. When you stop reaching out, she doesn't just think, "Oh well." She starts feeling something before she ever forms a conclusion. And those feelings influence how she reacts, how she reaches out, or how she pulls back. This video breaks down exactly how a woman tends to respond when you stop contacting her. Not in theory, but in real-world behavior. No exaggeration, no fantasy. Just the honest psychological shifts that happen when attention is removed. Before we go further, welcome to the channel. If you're here, you're probably trying to understand women better, stop over-chasing, and regain control of your emotional position. That's what this space is about. Clear insight, not feel-good advice. Now let's get into the real responses most women have when a man suddenly goes quiet. 1. She feels the shift before she understands it. When you stop contacting a woman, the first thing that happens isn't logical thought, it's emotional awareness. She doesn't sit down and analyze what's going on. She feels that something is off. The energy changes before the explanation ever shows up in her mind. Before the silence, there was a rhythm. Messages, calls, reactions, attention. Even if she wasn't fully invested, she was used to your presence. When that presence suddenly disappears, it creates a gap. And humans don't like unexplained gaps, especially emotional ones. At first, she might not panic. She might even tell herself it's nothing. Maybe you're busy, maybe you're tired. But the longer the silence lasts, the louder that feeling becomes. Not fear, awareness. She becomes more conscious of you precisely because you're no longer there. This is where many men get it wrong. They assume that if a woman isn't immediately reaching out, nothing is happening on her side. But internal reactions always come before external ones. She notices the absence. She senses the change. And once she senses it, she can't unsense it. Picture this. You've been talking consistently. You're available. You respond. Then suddenly, you don't. No announcement, no explanation, just silence. Her phone becomes quieter, but her thoughts become noisier. She starts checking. Not obsessively at first, but casually. Then more deliberately. She wonders if she missed something, if she said something wrong, if you're upset, if you're talking to someone else. These questions don't come from desperation. They come from disruption. What's important here is that the shift makes her emotionally alert. And emotional alertness is the doorway to attraction, reflection, and reevaluation. Comfort makes people lazy. Disruption makes them pay attention. Another key point men overlook is this. She may still look calm on the outside. She may not post anything obvious. She may not reach out right away. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. Women are often very controlled with their outward reactions. The real response happens internally first. Your silence removes predictability, and predictability is what allows interest to fade quietly. When you stop contacting her, you interrupt the story she had running in her head about you. And once that story breaks, she has to rebuild it, with less information than before. That's powerful. 2. Curiosity replaces comfort. When you were consistently present, a woman didn't need to wonder about you. She knew where you stood. She knew you'd respond. She knew you were there. That certainty creates comfort, but comfort also dulls emotional engagement. The moment you stop contacting her, that comfort disappears. And in its place, curiosity starts to grow. Curiosity isn't loud. It doesn't show up as immediate texts or dramatic reactions. It shows up as questions she keeps asking herself. Why did he stop? What changed? Is he losing interest? Did I misjudge him? Is there someone else? What makes curiosity powerful is that it pulls her attention back to you without you doing anything. She starts thinking about your behavior instead of just enjoying the benefits of it. That's a big shift. Many men think attraction is built through constant communication. In reality, attraction is built through emotional engagement. And emotional engagement requires uncertainty, not chaos, not games. Just enough unpredictability to keep the mind involved. When you disappear from her daily routine, you force her to mentally fill in the blanks, and people always fill silence with meaning. She doesn't assume nothing, she assumes something, and that something often feels bigger than reality. Another mistake men make is assuming curiosity equals weakness. It doesn't. Curiosity is a natural response when something familiar suddenly changes. It's how humans reorient themselves emotionally. This is why a woman may start checking your social media more, or rereading past conversations, or casually bringing you up in her thoughts. Not because she's obsessed, but because the certainty she had is gone. Comfort allowed her to place you neatly in a category. Curiosity forces her to reopen that category and question it, and questioning is where emotional investment grows. What's also important to understand is that curiosity doesn't always lead to immediate action. She might wait. She might observe. She might test the silence internally before doing anything externally. Women are often more strategic with emotional exposure than men realize. Your silence gives her time to feel instead of react. And feelings that develop in silence tend to be stronger and more personal because they aren't influenced by your reassurance or explanations. This is why chasing usually kills attraction, while restraint often strengthens it. When everything is available, nothing is valued. When access is removed, value is reevaluated. 3. She starts replaying old conversations. Once curiosity sets in, the next thing that often happens is reflection. A woman begins to mentally rewind interactions she had with you. Things you said, things she said. Moments that didn't seem important at the time suddenly feel heavier. This isn't nostalgia, it's analysis. When contact was steady, there was no reason to revisit the past. Everything felt current and ongoing. But when you stop reaching out, the past becomes the only available data. So her mind goes back there to look for meaning. She starts wondering if there were signs she missed, if you were pulling back earlier, if your tone changed, if she said something that pushed you away. Even small moments get re-examined because the silence demands explanation. Men often assume women forget quickly. In reality, women remember emotionally charged interactions very well. And silence creates emotional charge. It gives previous moments new weight. What's interesting is that this replay usually favors you, not because you were perfect, but because absence removes friction. When you're not present, there are no new mistakes, no overtexting, no neediness, no explanations. The version of you in her mind becomes cleaner and more controlled. She remembers how you made her feel, not how often you were available. This is also when emotional contrast shows up. She compares how she felt when you were present versus how she feels now. And that contrast can create longing. Not because she's lonely, but because something meaningful has been removed without warning. Another important point. When she replays conversations, she's trying to regain emotional balance. Silence disrupts her emotional position. Reflection helps her regain a sense of control, even if it's only internal. This is why some women suddenly realize they cared more than they thought. Not because their feelings magically appeared, but because the safety net of your attention is gone. Replaying conversations is a sign that she's mentally re-engaging. She's investing thought, emotion, and energy again, all without you doing anything. And investment always increases perceived value. Men often sabotage this phase by breaking silence too early. They sense the distance, get anxious, and reach out just to check in. That one move collapses the entire mental process she was going through. Silence gives her space to feel the absence fully, and absence sharpens emotional clarity. 4. Her ego gets quietly triggered. When you stop contacting a woman, something subtle but powerful happens. Her ego gets involved. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a quiet, internal way that affects how she sees you and herself. As long as you were consistently reaching out, there was reassurance. Reassurance that she was wanted, chosen, valued. Even if she didn't consciously think about it, your attention confirmed her position. When that attention disappears, the confirmation disappears with it. This is where many men misunderstand women. They assume ego means arrogance or selfishness. In reality, ego is about identity and self-perception. When your silence removes validation, it forces her to question her impact on you. She starts wondering, did I misread how much he liked me? Was I wrong about my influence? Did he lose interest, or did I never really have it? These questions don't come from insecurity alone. They come from disrupted certainty. And disrupted certainty always pulls ego into the picture. What's important is that this doesn't instantly turn into anger or resentment. Often, it turns into quiet self-awareness. She becomes more aware of how she treated you, how much effort she gave, and whether she assumed your presence instead of appreciating it. This is the phase where power dynamics shift. When you were always available, she had leverage without needing to use it. When you step back, that leverage weakens. And ego notices when control changes. This is also why some women suddenly become more interested once attention is removed. Not because they suddenly fell in love, but because their sense of being chosen is challenged. Men often feel guilty about this, thinking they're being manipulative. But here's the truth. You didn't do anything to her. You simply stopped overgiving. Her reaction is about adjustment, not harm. Silence doesn't inflate ego, it tests it. And tests reveal emotional investment. If she truly didn't care, your absence wouldn't register. Ego only reacts when something mattered on some level. This stage is important because it separates genuine disinterest from assumed dominance. A woman who was only enjoying your attention will feel unsettled. A woman who was emotionally invested will feel reflective. And in both cases, you gain clarity. Your silence forces her to face a version of herself that existed only because you were always there. And once that mirror is placed in front of her, she can't ignore it. 5. She tests the silence instead of respecting it. When a woman feels the shift, gets curious, replays the past, and feels her ego quietly challenged, the next natural response for many women is to test the silence. Not confront it. Not ask directly what's going on. But test it. This is where a lot of men get confused. She may send a short message, something casual, something that doesn't reveal much. A hey, a reaction to a story, a random question that doesn't really need an answer. On the surface, it looks meaningless. But emotionally, it's very intentional. She's checking access. She wants to see if you're still available the moment she reaches out. If you'll respond quickly. If the dynamic resets the second she taps your shoulder. This isn't manipulation. It's instinct. Humans test stability before trusting change. Picture this. You've stopped contacting her. Days go by. She finally sends something small. Not emotional. Not vulnerable. Just enough to reopen the door without risking rejection. What she's really asking is, do I still have him? If you respond instantly, overly eager, or with long explanations, the test answers itself. The silence meant nothing. The shift was temporary. The comfort returns. But if you respond calmly, slowly, and without over-investing, something different happens. She feels the silence had weight. That you didn't disappear out of weakness. That you chose distance. This moment is critical because it teaches her how to treat you going forward. Women don't learn boundaries from words. They learn them from behavior. Testing the silence is also a way for her to protect her ego. She doesn't want to risk reaching out emotionally if she's unsure where she stands, so she probes lightly. Many men ruin this phase by unloading emotions the moment she reaches out. They vent, they explain, they ask where they stand. And in doing so, they erase the psychological work the silence created. The silence wasn't meant to punish her. It was meant to reset you. And this test shows whether you've actually changed or just paused. If you pass this stage, the dynamic shifts permanently. If you fail it, things usually go right back to how they were. 6. She rewrites the story in her head. When silence stretches and your behavior stays consistent, a woman doesn't just react. She starts rewriting the story she had about you. Before, the story might have been simple. He likes me more than I like him. He's always there. I don't have to worry about losing him. That story allowed her to relax, but it also allowed her to disengage emotionally. When you stop contacting her and don't immediately fold when she tests the silence, that story no longer works. So her mind creates a new one. Now you become the man who chose distance, the man who didn't chase, the man who didn't beg for clarity or reassurance. And that version of you feels different, more grounded, more self-directed, more independent. This rewrite matters because attraction is deeply connected to narrative. How a woman frames you internally affects how she feels when she interacts with you again. If the new story is, he walked away because he knows his value, respect increases. If the story is, he disappeared because he's insecure, attraction drops. And here's the key difference. The story she chooses depends on how you handle the silence. If you stay calm, consistent, and emotionally controlled, her rewrite favors you. If you disappear emotionally, then reappear needy or reactive, the rewrite works against you. Men often think attraction is built in conversations. In reality, attraction is often built in the space between them. Silence gives her room to assign meaning. And meaning sticks longer than words. This is also when some women start talking about you differently to friends. Instead of dismissing you, they start wondering. Instead of minimizing you, they start questioning themselves. You didn't convince her. You didn't argue your worth. You allowed her to feel the absence of it. Rewriting the story is how people regain emotional coherence. And once she rewrites it in a way that respects you, your position in her life changes, whether you reconnect or not. 7. What your silence reveals about you as a man. This is where things turn back toward you. And this part matters more than her reaction. When you stop contacting a woman, you're not just triggering responses in her. You're revealing something about yourself. And whether this works in your favor depends entirely on why you went silent and how you handled it. If your silence is fueled by anger, resentment, or a need to be noticed, it leaks out. It shows up when you respond too fast, when you explain too much, when you're emotionally loaded the moment she reaches out. Women feel that immediately. But if your silence comes from self-respect, clarity, and emotional control, it changes you. You stop hovering. You stop waiting. You stop placing your emotional stability in her hands. This is where some men need honest reflection. Many men say they're doing no contact, but they're still watching stories, rereading chats, and waiting for her move. That's not strength. That's withdrawal with attachment. Real silence isn't about strategy. It's about regaining your center. And here's the constructive truth. If you panic the moment she tests the silence, you weren't ready to stop contacting her in the first place. Silence only works when it reflects internal change, not just external behavior. This is also where men need to wake up. If the only time you pull back is when you feel ignored, you're still reacting. Power comes from choosing, not from being pushed. Your silence should come from standards, from realizing you don't chase uncertainty, from understanding that mutual effort is non-negotiable. Whether she comes back or not, this shift benefits you. You become calmer, clearer, less reactive, more selective. And women respond to that version of a man differently, not because he's distant, but because he's grounded. When you stop contacting her the right way, you're not trying to get her attention. You're deciding what kind of man you're going to be. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men avoid. When you stop contacting a woman, her response matters far less than what that silence does to you. Yes, women often feel the shift. Yes, curiosity shows up. Yes, ego gets triggered, stories get rewritten, and silence gets tested. But none of that is the real win. The real shift happens when you stop chasing clarity from someone who's unsure about you. Silence isn't a trick. It's a mirror. It reflects emotional imbalance and forces both people to confront it. For her, it reveals how much she relied on your attention. For you, it reveals whether you are acting from desire or from fear of losing her. If she reaches out and you stay centered, the dynamic changes. If she doesn't, you gain something more valuable than her attention: self-respect and direction. And here's the thought-provoking part most men don't expect. If a woman only values you when you pull away, she never valued you correctly in the first place. That realization alone can save you months, sometimes years, of emotional confusion. If this topic hit close to home, share your experience in the comments. Tell me what happened when you stopped contacting her, how she reacted, or what you struggled with most. I read the comments, and I engage, because real insight comes from real stories, not just theory. If you're serious about understanding women, improving your emotional control, and showing up as a grounded man instead of a reactive one, you're in the right place. Stay aware, stay centered, and don't chase what doesn't choose you.